Hello and welcome to this online educational seminar hosted by Success Coaching. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to join us. We're very excited that you're here and we look forward to sharing with you some valuable content as you start to think about a career in customer success. Now, before I get started, I need to run through some quick admin related to today's event. First of all, just to let you know, your microphones will be muted throughout the event. But if you have questions that you wish to ask, there is a Q&A panel. Please post your questions in there and we will address them at the end of the core content. If we don't get to any of them, we'll also follow up afterwards, and we'll tell you more about that in a moment. I also wanted to let you know that this event has some interactive components to it in the form of quick polls. This is your opportunity to interact with us and tell us a little bit about yourselves. So we're going to try one of those out now just to give you a chance to see what that looks like. This poll has two questions. The first one is, where are you joining us from today? The second is, how did you hear about this seminar? If you could answer those two questions, that would be awesome. So welcome wherever you are. It's great to have you here with us. And lastly, I do want to mention that we will be sharing with you a number of free tools and resources during the course of this event. Rather than you having to kind of write down URLs and links throughout the event, what we're going to do is share them all at the end. We're going to give you a link to go to that has access to all the resources and tools that we talk about throughout the course of the event. So please stick around and make sure you stay till the end. So let me quickly introduce myself, now the admin's out of the way. My name is James Scott. I'm a general partner here at Success Hacker, and I lead the education side of our business, which is known as Success Coaching. I've been working in the technology industry for over a decade in a variety of post-sale roles, including support, professional services, and customer success. So I look forward to sharing some of my experiences and hopefully convincing you that customer success is a great career choice. I also want to introduce my co-host, which is Andrew Marks. Andrew, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Andrew Marks. I have spent 25 years in post-sales roles in the technology industry. The last 20 of those years building and running success and services teams for software companies, B2B software companies, both on-premise as well as in the cloud. And my founding partner, Todd, and I built this business to help companies and help people deliver a better experience for their customers. We appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. And I'm really excited to have Andrew here because Andrew has a wealth of experience, particularly in helping companies with recruiting. So he will be sharing some of those experiences throughout the course of today's event. So quickly, here's what we're going to cover over the next 40 minutes or so. We're going to unpack this global customer success movement. We're going to tell you what customer success is and why it's so important in today's B2B and also B2C companies. We're going to be exploring the different flavors of customer success roles. Not all customer success roles are created equal. That's good. It means that there are many varieties out there, and we're going to help you understand what those are and hopefully help you narrow down on the ones that are going to be most suitable for your particular strengths and experiences. We're then going to reveal some of the skills and disciplines that we have seen the best CSMs, customer success managers, have in common. And we'll be digging into some of those and telling you, what we think is important, but also how to close gaps if you do have skills that are missing. And then we'll be talking or introducing you to a framework. So if you do decide to pursue a career in customer success, we suggest you take a structured approach to your job search. And we're going to show you a framework for doing that. And then throughout the course of the event, we're going to be sharing some checklist action items for you. There's going to be 5 in total, and we'll recap those at the end. But these are action items that you can complete after this event to help you decide what the right next step is for you. And it's the first one of those action items. We're going to ask you to join a private discussion group that we've set up within our online community. And this group is especially for customer success job seekers. And we'll share details on how to join this group at the end of the webinar. But we have this online community. It's totally free to join. We have over 5,000 customer success professionals from around the globe within this community today. So it's a great place to go and learn from others, to ask questions, to hear about other people's experiences, and also to kind of, as you're going through your own job search process, to get advice, tips from others who are doing the same. All right, well, let's get into the core of the content. What is customer success? Well, it all started at a software company called Salesforce, which I suspect most of you on the call have heard of. They are based in San Francisco. That's where they started out, but now they're a global company, highly successful. But they were the first company to really move software into the cloud. And by that, we mean delivering software through a web browser rather than having it installed locally on your hard drive and running it from a local server. Now, they were kind of right at the forefront of this change in the way that software is delivered. But nowadays, it feels very normal for software to be delivered through a web browser, right? Most of us get most of our software products that way. But back 13 years or so, it was very new. And Salesforce, whilst they were blazing this trail, they discovered that actually it requires, to do this successfully, requires a change in mindset. In the old days of kind of on-premise software, it was much more common just to sell software to a company and then help them get it installed on their servers, get people trained, and then you could kind of forget about it. You just do a little bit of support when the customer needed it. But essentially, they were stuck. The customer was stuck. They had your software. They'd spent a lot of money buying it and then installing it and training people on it, and they didn't really have many options in terms of moving off that software. The move to the cloud really caused some changes in that. And there's really two main changes that happened as a result of this evolution in cloud technology. The first is that consumers now have more choice of products and services than ever before. So if you think about it, it's now much cheaper to develop and deploy software. And as a result, there are more companies building software. So if you are a business and you have a need for some software to do a certain task in your business, there are now probably multiple applications that would be suitable for that job, and you have more choice. So that's the first change that Salesforce discovered, but also that other companies now are thinking a lot about. The second thing is that it's now much easier to switch from one software product to another. So whilst it's easier to get up and running with a new product, on a new software platform, it's also a lot easier to switch to a competitor. And so that, if you're a software company, that's something that kind of keeps you up at night, right? You can no longer just sell your software and then sit back and just answer the support line if it rings. Instead, you have to be thinking all the time about whether your customers are getting the value from your product that they initially signed up to get. Because if not, your customers are going to vote with their feet and their wallets, and they're going to take their business to one of your competitors. So it's required a mindset shift from software vendors. Thing that shifted has been the risk. Going back again to that on-premise example I gave you, all the money was paid up front, and so that money sat in the bank account of the software vendor, and all the risk really was on the customer. They had to make sure they used the product to get value, otherwise they'd lost a lot of money and hadn't got any value in return. Nowadays, however, it's much more common for customers to pay companies on a subscription basis, where they pay a regular amount, maybe monthly, maybe quarterly, maybe annually, to a software company for access to the software. So if you're a software vendor today, you get very little money up front when you first sell to a new customer. In fact, the vast majority of your revenue comes in the months and years after that initial sale. So if you don't keep the customer on your platform for multiple years, you probably will spend more money acquiring the customer in the first place than you actually make from the customer during their time with you. So it's essential that you keep the customer as long as possible. So with all this going on, it really has required software companies to really think hard about how they're structured, how they spend their time, what employees they need on their team to make sure that customers are getting value. So there's two things now that software companies, but other companies as well, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. There's two things that that software companies spend a lot of time thinking about. The number one is that customers are now buying outcomes. So customers are purchasing a product because of the impact they believe it will have on their business. They're not buying a product because of the features and the functionality. They only care about the impact it has on the business. So using this analogy here, the customers want a half-inch hole, but they're buying the half-inch drill bit that you're selling in order to make that hole. But if you sell them the drill bit and don't teach them how to use that drill bit to make the hole, then they'll take their business to another competitor of yours. So it's really important that you think about and understand the outcomes that your customers are looking to achieve so that you can help them be successful in achieving those outcomes. And only by doing that will you keep customers for multiple years. The second thing that's keeping software companies on their toes is that customers now have much higher expectations around the whole experience. Customers have got used to some great experiences in some of the apps that they use in their personal lives. For example, when shopping on Amazon or when getting a taxi with Lyft, right? It's become quite enjoyable in many ways to use these applications. And there's very low friction, which means the effort is low. It's very easy to get value. And those same people that are using Lyft and shopping on Amazon are also working in companies that are buying software. So their expectations when they're buying business software have increased. They expect the experience to be better and for friction to be low. So if you're a software company, you need to be thinking not just about how do you understand outcomes that customers are looking for, but also how do you get them there in a way that is as low friction as possible and gives them an experience that they find enjoyable. So that's a lot to think about. And I hope you can start to see why this is a real shift in terms of the mindset that software companies of today have versus what they looked like maybe a decade ago. Now, if you get this wrong, then we have an issue, right? We have this thing called churn. Churn is where one of your subscribers, one of your customers who's subscribing to your software, takes their business somewhere else. Because if it's easy to switch providers, then customers are much more likely to take their business elsewhere if they're not getting the results they expected. And churn kills subscription businesses. If churn is too high, a business that operates on a subscription type model will fail. So customer success is all about making sure that churn is minimized. And if you look at it from the other side of the coin, if you get this right and provide customers with the outcomes that they're looking for and a great experience, then it has a really powerful self-reinforcing, it kind of creates this self-reinforcing flywheel effect. And the reason for that is prospective new customers or prospective buyers are increasingly looking to input from existing customers before they make a purchase decision. So if somebody's thinking about buying some software for their company, they're asking their friends, they're asking their colleagues, they're asking people in their social networks. They're asking other people that use that product, what did you think? Is it having an impact on your business? And they are trusting that advice and using that advice as part of their purchase decision more than ever before. So it's really important that when they ask those existing customers of yours what they think, that those customers have good things to say. And if they do say good things, then you're more likely to sign up those prospective new customers. And the cost of signing them up, the cost of acquiring them, will be reduced. They're much more likely to convert, they convert quicker, and you spend less money on sales and marketing. So this is a really powerful dynamic that can really create highly successful businesses. And this is what Salesforce have really done a good job of. So customer success, really, we talk about it often as a role, right? As a customer-specific individual contributor called a customer success manager. And that is an essential part of customer success. But we can also talk about customer success as an organizational mindset. It's about getting everybody in the company to think about how do we help customers achieve the outcomes that they're trying to achieve. And to do that, you have to have everybody pulling in the same direction, from the marketing team to the sales team, from the product team to the support team. Everybody has to be aligned in order to help to achieve success in this way. And this is where customer success teams really have a big part to play. Not only will you be dealing with customers and talking to them about their individual needs, but you'll also be helping your colleagues in other teams to understand what customer needs are. You're going to be that internal advocate for your customers, the voice of your customer internally within your organization. And so it's a very influential role. It's a role that gives you great exposure to many different parts of a company. And if you do a good job, it can lead to some really interesting career progression. And we'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. This quote always makes me smile. It's a reminder that our job is never done in customer success. Success is never owned. It is rented, and the rent is due every day. We can't stop thinking about how to make customers successful. If we do, our customers will fail and they'll take their business elsewhere. We have to constantly be thinking about what can I do next to help my customer progress the next step on their journey towards their definition of success. And it's really important that we recognize it's their definition. You could have two customers who look very similar. They could be two competitors or two almost identical companies, but they might have different definitions of success. And your job in customer success, or the job of customer success teams, is to understand that nuance, to recognize that two companies that on the surface look the same could have very different goals. And unless we understand those goals, we can't make them both successful. And so in customer success, there's a lot of asking questions. There's a lot of listening, because we need to really understand our customers. And the better we understand them, the better the impact we can have on their organization. Here's an example of how this kind of impacts the day-to-day kind of mindset of an organization. So here we are, we're delivering a seminar on starting a career in customer success. So the question is, what would be the best way to measure the success of this seminar? Now, we could ask you at the end of this hour whether you enjoyed it. We could ask you whether you found it valuable. And both those answers would be helpful to us. But ultimately, the success of this seminar is, did we enable you to make a decision about whether customer success was the right career for you or not? Right? That is why you're here. So unless we achieve that, we haven't achieved success. So it presents a whole host of challenges as an organization, because you have to ask different questions of your customers. You have to ask in different ways. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you can do everything right as a company, but your customers don't follow your advice or don't take action that they need to take. And so aren't successful. So as a company, even though you've done everything that you could do, the customer still isn't being successful, and they still will probably churn. They probably will take their business somewhere else. And that's the constant challenge we have in customer success. We can build great products that have the features and functionality that they need, but unless customers adopt those products and use them in the way that we've helped them understand is best to achieve the outcomes that they're looking for, unless they take that action, we're not going to have the impact that we could have on their business. So a big part of a lot of our time as customer success professionals is thinking about adoption. How do we understand our customers and then communicate with them in a way that helps them use the tool we've given them in a way that has real business impact? And if we get that right, then we create successful customers. And successful customers are valuable for 3 reasons. Number 1, they stay with you for longer. The longer they stay with you, the more profitable an individual customer becomes. The second is they'll spend more money with you over time. If you show them that you can create value in year 1, it's more likely they will increase the amount of money they spend with you in year 2, because you have demonstrated that you can provide a good return on investment for them. So if you get success right, then the amount of money they spend with you over time should increase. And that, combined with them staying with you for longer, makes that customer even more profitable. And the third impact is those customers will tell others about you. And we talked about that in terms of advocacy and how important that is. Advocacy helps you acquire new customers in a more cost-effective way. So the more your customers are successful, the more likely it is they'll tell people about that success, and the more prospective new customers will come knocking at your door interested in your product or service. So that is customer success in 10, 15 minutes, right? There's a lot more to it though. And so checklist action number 2 for you is to download and read this white paper. We wrote a white paper called The Origins of Customer Success, and we go into some of the things we've just touched upon. We go into them in a lot more detail in this white paper. And this is great reading as you think about whether this is a career for you, and also as you start to think about applying for jobs and interviews and things like that. This will give you some great language and terminology to be able to use within the job hunting process. All right, so why is customer success as a career so hot right now? Well, software companies around the globe are investing in customer success teams for the reasons that we've just described, right? It's impossible now to operate a software company if you don't have a customer success strategy. And not only do you need a strategy, but you then need to execute on that strategy, so you need people. And so there's a lot of investment on a global basis going into customer success teams. And this isn't just within software. See, a lot of the examples we're using today are software related. And that is because the majority of customer success opportunities right now are within the technology or software business. But as consumers are getting used to this subscription type relationship with companies, it's forcing other industries to also adopt subscription revenue models. So, for example, there are a few car companies now, including Ford, Volvo, Porsche, who are providing car subscriptions. Now, this is different from buying a car. It's different from finance. It's different from a lease. What you do is you pay a monthly amount, let's say to Ford, and if you then get access to one car from their fleet, and you use that car, and let's say you have kids and you've got to do the school runs during the week, then maybe you have a Ford Explorer, and that's your car you use most of the time. But then you get to perhaps the weekend, and you're going away with your significant other for a romantic getaway. Maybe you want to switch your Ford Explorer out for a sporty Ford Mustang. So you can just basically switch your car and use a different car for the weekend. So it's a subscription type model. And it's really important for Ford thinking about, are you getting value from this subscription, right? Do they see you switching car? Are you taking advantage of the benefits of this subscription? Because if not, you're going to take your subscription somewhere else. So that's just one example. Obviously, you've seen entertainment subscriptions. That's something that's pretty common now. Furniture subscriptions. There's a company out of San Francisco called Feather that gives furniture subscriptions. So they recognize that a lot of kind of the younger generation are much more transient and moving around from job to job and city to city. They don't want to buy a sofa and then have to pay to move it. They just want to subscribe to their furniture. And if they move to a different city for a new job, they just switch their subscription and the furniture gets picked up at their old city and they get the same products delivered from a different warehouse in their new city and put in their new apartment. It's a completely different way of thinking. But again, this model is now propagating out to many different industries. And these are just a few examples. We've seen many, many more. The good news is this means that customer success, number one, is here to stay. And number two, the opportunities are just going to accelerate. There's going to be more and more companies looking for customer success to help them keep their customers successful. Here's some data from LinkedIn. LinkedIn does a number of reports about kind of top emerging jobs and most promising jobs. And you can see customer success has been in the sort of top 10 for the last 3 years. There is a massive demand for customer success managers. This is a global demand. But there's a slight challenge. According to recent LinkedIn data, and this is from about 3 months ago now, there were approximately 20,000 open customer success jobs globally. So 20,000 job advertisements for customer success managers. Now, the challenge is, if you look on LinkedIn at the number of people that have customer success manager in their job experience, either in their current job title or in a previous job title, there were at the time only 60,000 profiles. So what this means is, obviously, out of those 60,000, only a small percentage are going to be looking for a new job at any one time. So that 20,000 open jobs cannot be serviced, it cannot be filled by the current customer success manager population. The result of that is that people are moving into customer success from other professions. So there's a high demand, there's a low supply, and that creates a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for people to transition into customer success from other career paths. And I think that's why a lot of you are probably here today. Okay, checklist item number 3. There are a lot of books. We often get asked for book recommendations. There are a lot of them out there, and actually we'll be sharing a full list of books that you might want to consider reading. But I wanted just to pick out 2 that I thought were very relevant to people that were at this stage of their customer success career. The first is Chief Customer Officer 2.0. So this focuses a lot on this kind of the mindset that I talked about. How companies need to really put themselves in the customer's shoes, think about everything from the customer mindset, and how that helps build what's known as kind of a customer-driven growth engine within a business. So it's a great book. I thoroughly recommend it. And then the second one is Subscribed. Subscribed really talks about the history of this kind of subscription economy, why companies have moved to this subscription model, why it's good for consumers, why it's good for companies as well, but also some of the challenges. And I think both these books give some really valuable backstory, as well as content that will help you as you start to have conversations around customer success with prospective employers. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what a customer success manager actually does. And this is, as I said at the beginning, there's a lot of different flavors of customer success manager. CSM responsibilities vary from company to company, and that's fine. That's a good thing. It means that there's not just one kind of template for what makes a good customer success manager. In fact, different companies, every company is different, and most customer success roles have different kind of responsibilities and duties within them. So what we want to do is just explain some of those to you today. And Andrew's going to be giving us some context here because he has a lot of these conversations every day. And then I think understanding this will help you to kind of work out which type of customer success roles you might be interested in applying for, and which ones you should probably avoid. So the first thing to mention is that some positions require higher levels of technical proficiency than others. So not all customer success managers are very technical. Some are. Some jobs require customer success managers to be quite technical, and others don't need that. It's not a requirement. All right, Andrew, were you going to say something?
I want people to understand it. It's you don't have to be a coder. You don't have to. Doesn't mean you need to sit there and be able to program. But being able, even in semi-technical positions, just being able to understand concepts and just have the capacity to learn, and then be able to have conversations to a certain depth with customers, whether they're on the business side or the IT side, and then knowing when to pull in somebody to support you when things get deeper is usually what you need when you're looking at a semi-technical role.
That's great. Thank you, Andrew, for the bit of color there. The other thing that often we get asked is, well, I don't want to sell. I don't feel comfortable selling. And I think customer success managers need to sell, right? They need to upsell, which is where you get existing customers to buy new products or services from you. So you're not selling to new customers, you're selling to existing customers. Again, it depends. Some companies require the customer success manager to be upselling and closing new business with existing customers. Whereas in other companies, that responsibility lies with the sales team, and it's left to the CSM to focus on making the customer successful and identifying potential opportunities for upsell. And at that point, to introduce the sales executive back into the conversation to have the more salesy conversation. So again, it varies.
And an upsell is honestly on the customer success side, an upsell is going to be the result of a customer success manager doing their job. Doing their job and ensuring that the customer is getting value, deriving value from your product or service. Because if they need more, why wouldn't they want to come back to you? Right? So if you're doing your job and you're helping drive value with the customer, and there is an opportunity for them to buy more, they're going to buy more. Now, whether technically you are going to handle that sale or not is, as James mentioned, it's on a case-by-case basis. And it's definitely something that you want to, you need to be prepared to, be prepared to do, be prepared to talk about. And, when you're doing your due diligence with, on a company and on a role, it should tell you in a job description what kind of skills and requirements there are for that job.
Great, thank you. And then the last thing to kind of bear in mind is that some CSMs look after large numbers of smaller customers, whereas others might look after a small number of large accounts. So typically companies tier their customer base. And so some customers will be kind of your most valuable, your highest revenue, your most strategic customers. And for those customers, you might have a customer success manager who looks after 10 of them, for example. They may be a one-to-one relationship where a CSM literally only has one customer that they're responsible for. But it may be maybe 10, maybe 20, where it's a relatively small portfolio, and each customer is quite valuable, and the CSM is having to build relationships with those customers, really understand their business well. Whereas for a lower tier of customer that's paying less, you can't afford to have that level of kind of hands-on contact with the customer. So some CSMs will typically have portfolios of customers anywhere between 1 and 300 perhaps accounts. And when you're dealing with that sort of number, you can't be having individual phone calls, going out to lunch with customers, right? You have to be much more comfortable kind of with process, using some automation, looking at data, using data to help you prioritize where you spend your time and to look for trends. So that is, again, you're still trying to make them successful. So a lot of the core concepts are the same, but the way you execute the day-to-day duties of your job and therefore the skills that you'll need for that role are going to be different in those two scenarios. The other thing just to mention is that customer success is a very broad term, particularly it gets kind of misused a lot. It gets, a lot of people kind of just change their job title to customer success because it's kind of in vogue. So we just wanted to break down the sort of 5 categories of customer success as it exists operationally within, or as it could exist operationally within a company. The first is getting a new customer onboarded onto the product. So that involves getting them set up, getting data imported, configuring their account, training the users, getting them live. So it's everything that basically happens from when the contract is signed to the point that they're live using your product day to day to do business. So that's a very kind of finite part of the customer life cycle, but it's a very, very important piece. Because if you don't get that right, you don't get a chance at everything else, right? So onboarding is absolutely critical. And some people specialize in that part of the customer success or of the customer journey. Another type of customer success operational role is around training, education, and enablement. So this is about producing content, leading training webinars, writing knowledge-based articles, thinking about how do you articulate to customers the best way to use the tool they have in front of them for different purposes. So it's very training heavy. This could be kind of one-to-one in-person training, or it could be building on-demand content that can be consumed by hundreds of customers at once. There's lots of different formats, but it's a type of sort of a skill set that and a type of job that is kind of discrete from some of the others. Another type of customer success role is around adoption and change management. This is more common in kind of more complex products and more complex organizations where there's a lot of change required in order to adopt your product. And change management is a skill on its own. Doing change management, managing change well is hard. But if you're doing customer success and you've got a customer that is, a massive company with thousands of employees that are going to be impacted by your technology, you need to have a very, very structured approach to helping them change their day-to-day activities and adopt your product. And that's a very discrete skill set, which highly in demand in the customer success space. The fourth piece is around kind of more traditional account management. This tends to be the example I gave earlier, where you have a smaller number of accounts. You're getting to know those accounts better. You're doing things like mapping the organizational structure so you understand who reports to who the influencers are, who are the key stakeholders. You're building multiple relationships within a company so that you can really understand that customer, but also be regarded as a trusted advisor to them. So they start to bring you much closer to their internal decision making, and that enables you to have a bigger impact on the organization.
And let me chime in here on the account management piece. When we're talking about account management, we're talking about more than just traditional account management from a sales perspective, where people tend to refer to account managers as they use the term farmers versus account executives who are hunters. They're hunting for business. Farmers are farming for business. This isn't a farming role. It's more than just mapping out the organization, as James said. It's becoming that trusted advisor. And you don't do that by taking people to lunch and shaking their hands and understanding who reports to who, right? The role of the customer success manager is to understand the business, yes, but to also understand the product and the value that the customer can get out of that product, and connect the dots between what the customer needs and what the product can provide to drive additional value. It's that kind of account management.
Thanks, Andrew, for the extra color. Then the fifth and final is customer support. So this is kind of more reactive, more transactional type interactions with customers. But this is an incredibly important part of customer success, because if you don't solve these kind of smaller things that crop up while customers are using your product, then the customer is going to be distracted by them and not going to be able to focus on the longer term, more strategic kind of big picture goals. So customer support is a key part of helping customers be successful. And whilst this may be a discrete job function within a company, it will work, typically reports into the customer success organization and works very closely with customer success managers. Now, in some companies, particularly younger companies, all those roles are handled by the same person. And that's kind of known in the industry as the hero CSM. This is the person that wears all 5 of those hats and is extremely busy. But that's typically how customer success starts in a relatively young company. And then as it grows, people start to specialize in one of those 5 areas. And, the more mature companies will have different people and different teams dedicated to each of them. So it really depends just how complex the product is, and also kind of the maturity of the company, amongst a number of other things as well. But at the high level, it tends to be related to the complexity of the product and the maturity of the business. Now, I just want to quickly share with you a typical day in the life of a CSM. This is something we put together just to kind of illustrate the different types of things, duties that a customer success manager might do during the day. I'm not going to read this all through now, but there's a few kind of takeaways here. Number one is that there's a lot going on. Customer success management is a busy job, and you need to be comfortable with that. That's kind of comes with the job. Number two is there's a lot of kind of context switching that tends to happen. You can be focused on a particular task and then get a phone call from a customer that's having a big problem, and you have to immediately drop what you're doing and start working on something else. So you need to be able to handle that, right? That stresses some people out, but it really is unusual to find a CSM role that doesn't require that type of flexibility. And the other takeaway here is that you have a lot of interactions with other parts of the organization. So whether it be the sales team or the product team or the engineering team or marketing, customer success really has reasons to interact with other parts of the organization. And that's great because that gives you exposure within your company. And it also helps you see how other parts of the organization work, really understand how they work. And that can be great in terms of making future career decisions about potentially moving into some of these other departments. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. So what makes a great CSM? That's a big question. And obviously there's a lot of answers. There's a lot of detail that we could provide here. But with the time we have available, we just want to focus on what a typical entry-level CSM looks like, which I think is where a lot of you listening today are in your careers. You're either thinking about moving into customer success, or maybe you're right at the beginning of a customer success career. So what are the sort of things that employers, in our experience, look for in our entry-level CSM hires? The first is they look for some sort of experience in a customer-facing role. That doesn't mean you've done customer success before. It doesn't necessarily mean you've worked in a technology company before. They just look for some evidence that you're comfortable and confident when interacting with customers. Now, this doesn't mean you have to have had in-person interactions with customers, right? This could be customer facing over the phone or over email, but it means that you've had customer contact, right? You've actually had a reason to talk to and interact with customers. Some sort of experience in a role like that is great, and we'll share with you some examples in a moment. Ideally, they're looking for a little bit of experience in the workforce. So if you're in college or university and you're thinking about customer success as your first job, yeah, you may be able to find a role. But actually, I think in our experience, employers look for a little bit of a track record. They want to see, they want a little bit of life experience, right, in the workforce, because one of the roles of customer success managers is to build relationships and build credibility in the eyes of their customers, because ultimately your job is to help customers influence customers' behavior. So they have to see you as somebody they trust and somebody they want to listen to. So having a little bit of kind of experience that you can point to gives you a bit more gravitas when it comes to having conversations with customers. So most hiring managers look for a little bit of workforce experience. We talked already about technical aptitude. It doesn't mean that you need to have worked in a technology company, but you do, if you're applying for a job in a software company, you obviously need to be comfortable with software. You need to be able to learn a new product. You need to be able to navigate around, and get to a decent level of technical aptitude. If you're applying for a customer success role in a non-technology company, well, that might be a slightly different story, but there are 99% of the customer success roles that are on the market right now are in technology companies, so they'll be looking for some technical aptitude. Communication skills are important. We talked about how customer success is about being a good listener, asking the right questions, learning and understanding your customer and their needs. And it's also about influencing, about communicating what you think is best and helping them feel confident in following your advice and taking action. So communication skills are really important to enable a customer success manager to do that. And then lastly, organizational skills. I shared with you how that example of what a day in the life might look like. There's a lot going on. Imagine handling 200 customers, right? All at different stages of their journey, all with different needs. You need to be an organized individual. So organizational skills are important. If you have a kind of a process-driven approach where you can kind of learn each time you do something, improve on the last time you did it, and think about that as a process that you're continually refining, that's very valuable. What I will say though is being too process-driven can also be can be bad, right? If you're not flexible enough, if you're so process-driven that you find it hard to switch context or to be flexible, then that is not ideal, because you will need to be comfortable with change. You will need to adapt and be flexible. And so, there's a balance there between organization and flexibility. And the best CSMs have both. The good news, though, is that most candidates you'll be going up against will have no real customer success experience either, right? We shared those numbers earlier. A lot of people are applying for customer success roles and they don't have customer success experience. That's fine. Don't worry about it. Just focus on your transferable skills. What is it that you have done in the past that is transferable to the role of customer success? Those are the things that you need to highlight when you're talking to prospective employers. And the other thing is domain experience. And Andrew you got some a couple of, I think, of great examples here of how domain experience can really make a difference.
Yeah, I had a gentleman that was in finance his entire career, and came to me and says, I want to get out of finance. 15 years from a controller to a VP of finance. So I really want to get into customer success. I enjoy being, meeting with people. Some of my best personal business experience, or some of my best business experiences, he said, were working with customers. And so I took a look at his body of work and realized that he had done a lot of budgeting, forecasting, and planning as part of his job. It's a standard process that people in finance do on a monthly, quarterly, yearly basis. And it just so happened that I had a client at the time that was a software vendor of budgeting, forecasting, and planning software, and so I was able to introduce him. And at first they pushed back. They said, this guy's got no customer success experience. And I said, I know that, but he speaks the language of your customers. He's got domain experience. And quite frankly, that tends to be even more valuable, depending on the product and your customer base, than having that customer success experience or even having experience in your particular product. And I pushed back on them, and they ended up hiring the guy. And within a year, he had actually taken his boss's job. He had 3 CSMs reporting up to him, and he owned all of the strategic customers in the company. So, great example of somebody who had domain experience that was able to transfer those skills and turn and pivot into a customer success role. One other example, really quick, is I had a woman who was trying to get into customer success, never held a customer success role before, and she was really passionate about cooking. She was really into cooking, loved cooking, loved food. Was able to take that passion, harness that passion, and get her a role with a company that is in the food service business. They have a food service platform that universities use to provide food services both on and off campus to their students.
Great examples. Thank you, Andrew. I think that hopefully is great to hear for a number of people on the call today who maybe don't have even technology business experience, right? Just being comfortable with technology and then having a domain experience or a passion for a certain industry can be all you need to get a job in customer success. So we've identified, we've put a project together and identified 5 key disciplines and 20 skills that the best CSMs have in common. And we've got them up on the screen here. You probably won't be able to read that. It's quite small. So we've also built a competency model, which is a 60-page document that walks through each of those 20 skills, why they're important, and also what they look like at 3 different stages of a customer success manager's career. So that document will be available to download using the link at the end. And we recommend you go and take a look at that and just sort of self-evaluate yourself against that customer success competency model. See how you stack up, because the areas where you're strong, those are the things you want to emphasize in interviews. And the areas that you're weak, maybe there are opportunities to do some additional training just to close those gaps to increase your chances of being successful in the job seeking process. What are some of the common paths into customer success? Well, we see people come from all sorts of places, but here are some of the most common. Definitely people moving from sales, either SDRs or SEs into customer success. We see people moving from customer service and technical support type jobs. Outside of the technology industry, we see a lot of retail and hospitality, front of house folks moving into customer success because they have those great, strong kind of customer-facing, relationship-building skills. And that can translate really well in certain types of customer success role. And as well as those, we see things like project managers, product managers, professional services consultants. These are just some examples. Andrew gave you a couple which were, weren't on this list, and there are many more. So if you don't see what you're doing now on this list, don't be discouraged. But these are definitely some of the ones that we see most often. And then in terms of where it could lead you, there are a number of places it could lead. There's, I mentioned how customer success really sits at the center of an organization and gets a lot of visibility into different departments. So you could end up moving into sales if you don't start there. Maybe that's a future progression. A lot of people move into product, whether it's product management or product marketing, because they really understand the customer and the customer needs. And there's also, I think, a really interesting opportunity to move into leadership roles and ultimately into the CEO role within an organization. If you look at CEOs nowadays, many of them have grown up. You hear them referred to as either a sales CEO or a product CEO. And that means they've either grown up in the sales organization or grown up in the product organization and progressed through that organization to become a CEO. I think in the future, we'll see people who are customer CEOs who've grown up in the customer success organization and who've made it into the C-suite and then ultimately into the CEO role of companies. So that's really exciting to me, and I'm sure it is to a lot of you as well. Now, we're getting tight on time, so I'm just going to introduce you very briefly to this job search funnel. We know that customer success recruiters or managers, hiring managers, take a very methodical approach to finding new people for their teams. They have a very structured process. So your chances of success in getting a job will increase substantially if you take a structured approach to your own job search. So we've built a job search funnel, which is a structured way of moving through the process of identifying companies that you want to target, to preparing your resume and LinkedIn profile, right through to applying, interviewing, hiring, negotiating your offer, etc. And we're going to be sharing more about that in a follow-up seminar, and I'll share details in just a couple of minutes. Here's your last checklist action. We have produced a career goals worksheet for you to work through and set your short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals for your customer success career. So this is a really simple worksheet. It's all pretty self-explanatory. This is available for download, and we'll give you the link in a moment. We recommend you do this now as a way of helping you. This is your own plan, right? This is your own plan for success in your career. And once you have a plan, then you can start to think about how you execute against that plan. So as we think about the next step now, here are the 5 things that we've outlined in terms of your checklist. And I think, Andrew, could you share that first link in the...
I will put that link into the chat window so you don't have to write it down.
Right. So if you go to that link, that will give you access straight into the private community space. And in there, you will find all these other items that I've referred to today, from the white paper to the competency model and the careers worksheet. And hopefully then you have all the information you need to make a decision. Do you wish to pursue a career in customer success? Yes or no? If it's a no, fine. At least we've saved you hopefully a bunch of time and energy in making that decision. If it's a yes, and you definitely want to take the next step, then we'd like to invite you to join a 3-part webinar series that we're running, which is taking you through that job search funnel that we introduced just a moment ago. There are 3 parts. Each part costs $29 to attend. And the link to that event...
I just put it into the chat window as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. So it's on your screen there, and it's also in the chat window. If you click on that link, you can register for part 1. And in that, we're going to be focusing on getting your resume and LinkedIn profile looking great, ready to start applying for jobs. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We covered a lot of content. We hope it was useful. We'll be posting some follow-up information in the community space. So we look forward to seeing you in there. If you have any further questions that didn't get answered, we'll answer those as well in the community space. So that's your place to go for those questions that come to mind in the next few days. And if you do decide to take the next step, then we wish you all the best of luck. We'd love to be of help to help you get your job in customer success. But thank you for turning up today, and we'll speak to you soon.